At the height of his peculiar experiment, Arthur Kingston, disguised as a vagrant outside his own mansion, confronts the harsh truth of how society treats those in need. Overlooked and mocked by passers-by, his belief in humanity begins to wane, until a modest stranger extends unexpected kindness, awakening something profound within him. Just when Arthur thinks he has witnessed it all, an astonishing twist prompts him to re-evaluate everything he believed about wealth, empathy, and the people around him. What he uncovers in that final surprising moment will alter his life forever. You won't believe what unfolds next. But before we proceed, please leave a comment and share where you are tuning in from today. If this tale resonates with you, press that subscribe button for more incredible stories. Arthur Kingston was no typical individual. Recognized as one of the richest entrepreneurs in the city, his reputation for achievement and influence preceded him wherever he went. With a vast mansion in the most prestigious area, luxury vehicles parked in his driveway, and a business empire valued in the millions, Arthur seemed to possess everything anyone could desire. Yet despite all the signs of wealth, something troubled him. Over the years, he had observed an increasing separation between himself and the world beyond his lavish bubble. He began to question whether people treated others differently simply because they appeared impoverished. Arthur had grown up with very little. In his youth, he had experienced firsthand what it was like to struggle, to feel invisible in a society that prioritized wealth above all else. His ascent to the top had been a long and arduous journey, but even after achieving success, he never forgot his modest beginnings. It was this recollection of hardship that inspired him to a peculiar but captivating idea. What if he disguised himself as a homeless man and sat in front of his own mansion? He wanted to observe how people would respond, whether they would exhibit compassion to someone in need or merely disregard him. On a brisk autumn morning, Arthur set his plan into action. He donned a pair of old, tattered clothes he had saved from his earlier days. Faded jeans, a worn jacket, and a hat that had seen better times. He picked up a small cardboard sign, scrawled "Need help" in shaky letters, and walked out to the front gate of his grand estate. Sitting on the chilly pavement just outside the towering gates of his mansion, Arthur felt an unusual sense of vulnerability. His expansive home loomed behind him, yet in that moment he was no longer the influential businessman but a beggar, completely at the mercy of passers-by. The street in front of Arthur's mansion was always bustling. People admired the mansion from a distance, its well-kept lawns and sparkling windows a testament to Arthur's success. But now, sitting at the gate in tattered clothes, Arthur viewed his luxurious world from a new and humbling angle. The individuals who had once admired his mansion did not stop to appreciate it today. They only noticed the beggar at the gate, and many found it easy to overlook him. The air was crisp, and the sky a cool shade of blue, but Arthur felt a chill inside that had nothing to do with the weather. The true coldness stemmed from the absence of humanity he was witnessing. The initial hours were disheartening. A middle-aged couple walked by, laughing and chatting, but when their eyes fell on him, their smiles vanished. They didn't stop or inquire if he needed assistance. Instead, they hurried past as if his very presence was a bother. Arthur attempted to catch their gaze, but they looked away, evading any interaction. Arthur shifted uncomfortably on the cold pavement. "Is this how I would have been treated in my youth?" he pondered. It was one thing to comprehend poverty from the outside, but quite another to feel firsthand the way people dismissed him now. Every glance felt like a silent judgment, every step past him an act of rejection. He began to lose hope that anyone would show the slightest bit of kindness. As the day progressed, a young woman in athletic attire approached. She was jogging along the street, her earbuds in, lost in her own world. Arthur raised his sign slightly as she passed, hoping she would notice. She did, but after a quick glance, she continued on her way, her pace never faltering. Arthur watched her fade into the distance, feeling a sinking sensation in his chest. The traffic on the street ebbed and flowed, and people came and went, but none paused. Some stared for a moment, some whispered to their companions, but not one offered help or even acknowledged his presence. A group of teenagers walked by, laughing loudly, their backpacks slung over their shoulders. One of them pointed at Arthur and muttered something to his friends. They all laughed, casting derisive glances in his direction. Arthur sighed. This was worse than he had anticipated. Even though he understood it was just an experiment, The sting of being treated like an outsider was sharper than he had imagined. He reflected on his younger days when he had struggled to make ends meet. Had things truly changed so much, or had people always been this apathetic to the suffering of others? Just as he was about to stand and deem the day a failure, a small rusted car pulled up and parked across the street. A woman in her early 60s emerged. She had graying hair tied back in a loose bun and wore a simple coat. Her shoes were worn, but she walked with a steady, determined pace. Arthur observed as she crossed the street and approached him. The woman stopped in front of him, her eyes soft with concern. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. Her voice was warm, not pitying, but genuinely empathetic. Arthur looked up at her, taken aback by her kindness. "I'm just trying to get by," he replied, playing the role. His voice, however, carried the faintest tremor of real emotion. After a day filled with rejection, the warmth in her tone felt almost overwhelming. She didn't hesitate. Without asking any further questions, she reached into her purse and pulled out a few crumpled bills. "It's not much," she said, offering them to him, "but I hope it helps. You shouldn't have to be out here like this." Arthur blinked, his throat tight with emotion. "Thank you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The woman smiled warmly, her eyes sparkling. "Take care of yourself, all right? The world can be tough, but there's always someone willing to help. Don't lose hope." With that, she walked away, leaving Arthur sitting there in stunned silence. Her words resonated in his mind. She didn't have much to give, but she offered what she could. And more importantly, she offered kindness. It wasn't the money that impacted him the most. It was the human connection, the simple act of seeing him, truly seeing him when no one else had. Arthur remained there for a while longer, lost in reflection. His entire viewpoint on wealth, status, and compassion had shifted in the course of a single day. How ironic it was that a man with so much could feel so isolated and forgotten when stripped of his wealth's facade. Just as he was about to gather his belongings and return to his life of luxury, one more figure appeared. This time it was his housekeeper, Maria. Emerging from the front gates of his mansion, she saw him and halted in her tracks, her eyes widening in recognition. "Mr. Kingston, is that you?" she asked, disbelief flooding her face. Arthur hesitated, uncertain whether to reveal the truth, but Maria was perceptive, and she quickly pieced it together. Her expression softened, but she didn't ask questions or scold him for the ruse. Instead, she reached into her own pocket, pulling out a few dollars and offering them to him with a compassionate smile. "You never know what people are going through, sir," she said quietly, kneeling beside him. "But if you can help, you should. That's something my mother always taught me. No matter how much or how little you have, kindness doesn't cost a thing." Arthur felt a lump rise in his throat as he looked at Maria. Her simple wisdom, spoken with such sincerity, struck him harder than he expected. The true wealth wasn't in his mansion or his cars. It was in moments like these, moments of genuine humanity that transcended money and status. Arthur stood, brushing off the dust from his clothes. "Thank you, Maria," he said, his voice heavy with gratitude. "I believe I've learned more today than I have in years." Maria gave him a knowing smile, her eyes sparkling. Sometimes we all need a reminder. As Arthur walked back through the gates of his mansion, the world felt transformed. He had set out to observe how people treated the poor, expecting to witness indifference and cruelty. And while he had encountered plenty of that, he had also witnessed something much more profound: the quiet, enduring strength of kindness in the most unexpected places. From that day forward, Arthur Kingston vowed to change the way he lived his life. He couldn't resolve the world's problems alone, but he could begin by using his wealth and influence to make a meaningful difference, not just through charity but through the simple, impactful acts of compassion that Maria and the elderly woman had shown him. In the end, Arthur realized that true wealth wasn't about money at all. It was about the kindness we extend to others and the humanity we share, even when no one is watching.